to Bromsgrove in Worcestershire, where we can speak to Dr. David Nicol from the Doctors Association. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. What do you make of the new appointment then? Because he stepped in as Home Secretary when Amber Rudd resigned over the Windrush scandal in 2018. And his last cabinet role was as Chancellor until, of course, he resigned in February 2020. And now, Health Secretary. Is he the right man for the job? Oh, I think we may have... Dr. David Nicol, can you hear me there?
Yeah, the audio's a bit weird. So, I mean, I think there could have been worse candidate, but equally, I think we should judge him by his actions rather than his words. I know him very well. In fact, I stood against him in the general election for the Lib Dems. But the issue with him, I met him when he was Home Secretary and was campaigning about visas for doctors from overseas. 1 in 7 staff from the NHS are from overseas, and he failed to do anything about that as Home Secretary. And there is a real staff crisis, as you alluded to, as we come out of the pandemic. There's over 100,000 staff gaps in NHS and over 100,000 social care. So actually how we deal with that, given that we've got nearly 200 different countries who are NHS staff, is going to be a real challenge. There's a whole pensions issue, which is an issue for doctors and doctors potentially retiring because they're fed up with and burnt out from the pandemic.
And he does have a lot, doesn't he, in his in tray? You know, we're looking at the 5 million waiting list that we were just mentioning there, that Ivor Bennett was mentioning in his report. Then there's the social care as well. And then, of course, looking at the route of the NHS in general as we emerge from the pandemic, the list really goes on.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a huge task for each and every one of us, basically. And we're not out of this pandemic yet. Obviously, it's fantastic, the vaccine program, and you know there's a huge backlog, and some of this goes back before the pandemic. So I know there was some discussion about whether Jeremy Hunt would be a better candidate, but in some ways he would be conflicted because of the failure to plan properly for a pandemic, which Operation Cygnus showed, which Jeremy Hunt was part of.
And earlier on, we had the BMA on the British Medical Association, and they said that Sajid Javid will get a baptism of fire. Do you agree?
He certainly will, and I certainly will in Bromsgrove. That's we really need to hold him to account, basically.
Absolutely. Let's just very quickly then talk about Matt Hancock. Just very quickly, what's the legacy that you think he's left behind?
Well, actually, that also relates to Sajid Javid, and particularly the story this morning that he was using a personal Gmail account is very troubling. And given the accusations of cronyism, how much will Sajid Javid analyse how these contracts are given out? And the Good Law Project's been looking at this, potentially millions of PPE contracts and other contracts as part of the pandemic. This does need to be looked at. So I don't think the Hancock story I think that's actually just beginning. I think it's far from over.
Absolutely. I tell you what, Dr. Nicol will be keeping a close eye. It's all very interesting, isn't it? Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.